You always got to destroy all the arcade machines in Hanamura, or else your team is doomed to lose the attack. It just happens. It just happens.
Zarya, Ryan.
So you do a lot of calls just right off the bat.
They have Torb and Zen.
Whoa, there's Sombra's
There's a
above.
Sombra top left.
Sombra reconned out.
The second I see a chance to jump in on the Mercy.
Torbjorn is actually low-key
Okay.
really good against
Tell me when.
flankers like Genji and Tracer.
Ryan is super low with Discord.
Mercy this.
How did I get hacked?
I don't know.
Mercy's one. Mercy's one.
I'm hating. What?
So using dash pretty aggressively there. You seem to be very confident, and like your 180s, I can already
gonna be
tell, are
close
very
to,
crisp and
Torvald.
practiced.
Really.
He's been doing a ton of work.
Still, that was you're very aggressively using cooldowns so far, which
Trigger
will
to
work
trigger.
as long
Back
as
up,
you
back up,
stay
back up.
alive. But the other thing is that dash, if you use it and you don't get the elimination, you're stuck, and you're especially going to die against things like Zarya's, Torbjorn's, and especially when there's a Zenyatta who's still going to be alive after that. So, first things I'm seeing are really aggressive cooldown usage. Your comms itself are pretty good though. Yeah, Sniper May has returned indeed. So they've got a lot of things that are going to make it really challenging for you to actually be successful here. So the Sombra is going to be difficult for hacking you. You can't really take her out because you can translocate. The Torb's going to be putting a lot of pressure on you whenever you're trying to fight in LOS. Or really in area, because if the healers are smart and the opponent has a Torbjorn, they're going to play in an area where the Torbjorn turret can see them. This is fine, poking down the Torb turret before you go in. Really, honestly,
Ryan's
quite
charging
good
a point.
value.
Bubble.
Yeah, I see.
Hack.
You use the bubble.
Sombra. Stop.
Yeah, so the other thing that I noticed there is that you heard the sound cues of the Sombra, but you didn't react to your backline getting attacked by the Sombra, who was on the high ground. So pretty, I wouldn't say tunnel vision, but you're focused on the front line offense here.
Oh, never mind. He vaulted. Focus Torb. Focus Torb. Focus Torb.
Zarya is low. Zarya is low. Kill Zarya. Kill Zarya. Kill
You just
Zarya.
don't have the damage up yet.
I blade.
So very tunnel visiony so far. Like you focus on one thing,
Yeah.
and you have an objective, but you're not really
make sure it's
caring
fat, make
about
sure you get the Zen.
what your team wants to accomplish. Especially like in this composition here, your Mercy, because you're running Genji and Sombra as your DPS. You've got dive tanks, and then you've got the Mercy and the Zenyatta. So the Mercy and Zenyatta are basically on their own here. And they are going against a Sombra, which is going to make it difficult, as well as the Mei itself. If the Mei gets onto either of those supports, both of them are just straight up fucked there. But, yeah, so your supports are not having really anyone protect them, unless it was Donut. But even Donut's going to get farmed pretty hard by the Sombra. So there's a whole bunch of things you could be doing here. And I wonder if this is actually Tom, if Solar is Tom. But, again, so far, really aggressive use of cooldowns. And I was going to say focused, but the second thing also appears to be tunnel visioning so far.
The Zen.
Did I see Cass's drawing? No, I
Zen's
did
just
not.
priority.
That's
Yeah,
just me and the monkey will dive on the Zen. See if we can force trans.
No. We'll just EMP the
we
Zen.
need to EMP it.
Okay, that works.
Going for it. I'll tell you one.
Okay. Sombra in our backline. Out.
EMP 3, 2, 1.
Go.
Bring Discord again.
Sombra hacked.
Go on Mercy.
Sombra dead.
Zarya's ult. Okay, just stay on point. Just stay on point.
What to say about that? It was completely on Scatterlink. That's mostly
Watch
on
the
your
Sombra.
Sombra's fault. But
Just spam exits.
one of the things is that EMP is
used
really
EMP.
strong, and then it
Yeah,
removes the
I just wanted to
opponent's
make sure to
cooldown,
test.
and you should be saving your blades for the follow-up themselves.
Yeah.
Do an eco
Is that an
push here,
EMP
don't
Zen
burn
should not be able to survive
Sounds good.
just in general. He gets EMP'd as a
I'm just
50
gonna
HP.
pressure
If he
the
fucks up,
Mercy's half.
or sorry, if the Sombra fucks up or there's zero fall off, it's on that Sombra's fault for not taking out the Zenyatta with a successful EMP. And the EMP's effects last long enough that, like, yes, you could use your dash to get into the fight earlier, but using your blade itself seemed like an overcommitment that you probably wouldn't have needed it. In this scenario, if the EMP is enough to win the fight, you don't want to be investing the blade as well. So that was just really awkward, and most of the fault does lay on the side of the Sombra. And reaction, I don't really blame you for whipping out the blade, because I would have assumed that you assumed that there were people more in that courtyard there when there weren't. But anyway, it was just really messy.
No flip by. May.
Discord.
I knocked her right off
Main
my ground.
Discord.
Okay, go high ground, go high ground.
I'm
Zarya alone. Zarya no, personal, no personal.
I'm on the Mercy on point.
Just one. Zarya's one.
Fuck it.
Zarya's one.
I got hack again. Oh my god.
They use Grav.
So I like that you have focus, and I feel like you have
Yeah.
sprint experience,
You're down
kind of
to-
with how very linear your thought process is in taking out singular targets. But that Zarya was double pocketed, and yes, she had used her personal bubble, but she had also used her projected bubble, and there was a Mercy there, and there was a Zenyatta there, and you don't really have a very high damage output composition here. You don't have a Hanzo, you don't have like a McCree or anything like that. You don't have very high damage here. You do have Discord, but unless I'm crazy, that Zarya wasn't
Fun.
discorded, or was she?
Okay, go high ground, go high ground.
I'm
Zarya alone. Zarya no, personal, no personal.
I'm on the Mercy on point.
Just one.
Yeah, so there's no Discord on that Zarya either.
Zarya's one.
Fuck it.
Zarya's one.
I got
The Discord is on the May.
hack again. Oh my god.
They used Grav.
Yeah.
So
Couldn't get trans out.
You're down to.
you're like, you make a good leader in terms of your actual comms presence in the game so far, but they're onto weird targets sometimes, and you also very heavily commit to them almost to the point of fault, where you stick on one character past the point where you should be sticking on that character. When you do have a lower DPS composition like this, you've got the Sombra and the Genji here, neither of which pumps out damage, but they have great ultimates and great utility. Reflect, dash, translocate, hack. These are all fantastic forms of utility, and you should be looking to use those, those abilities, the utility itself, to actually get kills as well as win the game. Like EMP has the ability to just wipe the opponents if you catch enough of them and then you do a coordinated dive. The Valkyrie and the Blade should be enough to wipe people if the Zenyatta doesn't transit, etc., etc. But right now you're not playing to your composition's strengths, being very aggressive against targets that probably shouldn't be aggressed on, focusing on them to the point of tunnel vision, and aggressively using cooldowns that basically makes it an all or nothing attack.
I'm
Did
not
we get
close enough
trans?
to Blade.
Oh god, Chad is
No, we didn't. He's way
Chad
in
is
the
out of
back
control
corner.
here.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm a
I have
flagger on
EMP
left
again.
side.
I have EMP.
Save it for Blade. Blade's gonna be like
Okay.
40 seconds.
I don't know. We could probably honestly just win with an EMP.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you want to be comboing the Blade with the EMP, but that's not necessary. And then the Winston's like, we can probably just win with the EMP, and he's correct.
Want to save the blade just to be safe. We can do another eco push.
Depends on how fast he builds.
We don't need to get on the eco push. I should be able to get it here before we fight.
Okay. Let's go left side.
Never mind, they're all on me.
Zen's
I might
gonna
die
be-
here.
Zen's gonna be middle. Zen's gonna be middle.
Yeah, they pinned me below.
So again, with that really aggressive dash there, like a dash is only worth one shuriken headshot. It really doesn't have that much extra damage to it. Landing 2 extra left clicks, 2 shurikens from a right click is equivalent, or just 1 being a headshot is equivalent to the damage that comes out from dash. In fact, it's slightly more to actually land the shurikens. And your dash is such an important tool for escape that using it for basically anything that isn't to save your life or to eliminate an opponent, you can use it for mobility and whatnot, but it should be primarily used for escapes and to combo people down and get those eliminations. Because if you go and you use that ability when there's no vertical escape for you, that you can escape from somebody using the wall climb instead of the swift strike, you're going to die. Absolutely. And here you got punished for it again.
Oh,
Damn.
I have Blade though.
Alright.
Nice.
Yes, blade. Let's just wait for him.
Genji cannot headshot with swift
No,
strike.
I'm under
now.
the bridge.
He's not bored.
I'll be back in about
Hack the mega behind us.
10 seconds.
Okay, I'm diving.
Okay, I'm
on
ready.
Point, the second Genji
I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I don't.
I have Shadow. Look
Okay,
for the Ryan.
cool.
You might be
wait,
hiding.
Wait until our
We
server's
probably
ready.
need to go. They're all holding that high ground above us. Yep, we got walled off.
Yeah.
You got one off.
That's fine. I'm up here.
I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready.
Dude, he's all the way in his spawn.
Kill this. Zarya, she's super low.
Okay, force it, force it, force it.
No, he did
I
it
mean,
because of my blade.
Shadow, watch out for Shadow. Watch out for Shadow right side. Watch out.
Dude, I got hacked twice.
I just walked it.
Can you, if you res me, I have EMP.
Somber one. Somber one. Somber one. Somber one.
I'm on the Mercy.
That's over.
Oh, we lost it.
Yeah, that's whatever. We forced the EMP in trends.
Like, yeah, you forced the EMP in
I
trance,
think we
but you
just
also used
honestly
blade
can't
yourself
do
here.
that.
And really good that the, you know, there's Zenyatta who played that really smart. I think I've actually played this guy before. But he retreated all the way back into his spawn. So basically, you use the EMP on only the Zenyatta, and then he just comes back during the stagger phase with Transcendence, or you have to EMP his team, and then they get Transcendence here. So this is another one of the reasons why you don't want to kind of stack your ultimates here, is because of the way the Zenyatta is playing. If, for example, you EMP the team and it doesn't hit the Zenyatta, then the Zenyatta can trance and kind of keep his team alive through that. But then after that, if you go for the Zenyatta with a dive, you know, having your tank outs to sustain yourself, or you whip out the Valk Blade combo to finish people off after that, then it's a lot better than investing two of your strongest ultimates, strongest offensive ultimates. Like Transcendence is still probably your strongest ultimate that your team has in general, but trying to force too many high power ultimates together leaves so many different ways that it leaves more openings for the opponent to counter them, instead of kind of throwing one large threat of the team one after another.
Take the point.
That's fine, but let's swap to like Ryan Zarya or something.
You think?
I think we're
They have-
okay. I think
they
we just
have-
push it one more time here with the
They have
EMP and we should be able to
freaking-
win it.
They have a Mei and EMP. Like,
So they do have Genji, or sorry, they do have Transcendence
Like,
burned,
defense
so they're going to be
makes it
charging
worthless
back their
against
Transcendence, and you still
Don't
have
Sombra's
worry.
EMP.
on, is on me.
Teleport it out, right, high ground?
4 people go through defense.
Wait, go high ground, go high ground, go high ground.
Okay, let's go. The Mei's gonna try to block us.
I got the wall out. I got the wall out.
No wall.
Oh well. Make us
Get him,
Jarrett.
Grab.
Really aggressive Swift Strike again.
Oh, she's so
Shout
good.
out.
Worked
Got
out for
her.
you that time because you did kill her.
Versus half.
Be dead.
Got two.
Oh, Mercy's getting the res.
Versus one. Versus
I'm
one
just
health
gonna
on
switch
point.
to McCree.
Mercy this.
Oh my.
So
one.
this Swift Strike right
Versus
here
half?
again. Again, you're throwing away that ability way too early.
Got two.
Oh, Mercy's getting the res.
Versus one. Versus
I'm
one
just
health
gonna
on point.
switch to McCree.
Mercy this.
Oh my.
Any
hacked.
heals?
Oh
So
man.
what? My. Whatever.
I was gonna try to switch to a different DPS, man.
I'm gonna switch to Zarya.
And I'm not
you,
sure if
Mercy.
it's just because this is 2CP or not, but you seem
should have
to
done
really
Mercy
want to
earlier.
Oh my God, how
combo
did you
your
get out of
ultimate
that
with
Mercy?
people,
I'm
or
still-
want to get like team wipes with it. I think you should. One of the things that you could be doing here, at least, is going for smaller number of eliminations without the assistance of your team, or just try like. I was talking to a really high-ranked Genji player, friend of mine, about how they were playing Genji in the newer meta, when kind of there was the Rein Zarya Brigida, and then Mercy Zenyatta Hanzo, and the way that they were playing into that as Genji was trying to farm their blade as quickly as they could without going for any really big eliminations unless the opportunity presented itself, and then using their blade and how fast they were farming it to try and force large ultimates out. Even if they didn't kind of get the big eliminations or anything like that, if they did remove Valkyrie and Transcendence from the fight, then when they did, for example, use Grav or anything like that, then the opponent was completely helpless to it. If you bring in more threats consistently than the opponent has the ability to defend, then they will lose. So you don't have to go for these flashy eliminations, and you don't have to go for these flashy giant team wipe kills. They're easier to counter, and if they do fail, which they have a high likelihood to, especially on something like Hanamura where the team's going to be playing split and they're near spawns and they have the ability to trickle back out, if you're going to be doing that, it can also hinder you.
Switch to McCree.
Okay. I have blade again.
Nice. I don't know if they have trans. They might.
Probably do. He's
probably.
on fire.
They're gonna try to bait the wall again. Genji bait the wall.
I will try to.
Because you
No,
have
they
a
used it.
dash.
They walled down,
Okay,
walled down.
let's go
They
mid.
just-
Let's go mid. I'm just going straight mid then.
Okay.
The
Watch out,
the
Zarya's behind you. Zarya's behind you. Looking for Grav. On high ground, on high ground, on high ground.
He's gonna grab.
It's
Yeah.
nice that you identified that.
Just drop down now.
Another wall?
That's how
Bring
cooldowns
Discord.
work.
I'm gonna die here.
I'm dead.
Do anything for you, Mercy.
But that was good. That was honestly pretty good. So
They have
this
really
fight
good
actually worked out pretty well for you in the fact that you noticed that Zarya was hiding. Oh, your wall climb fucked up. That's annoying. You noticed that the Zarya was hiding and that she was telegraphing Graviton. You took her out and you
Okay,
pressured her to the point where she couldn't find a Graviton. And then you went in with
We
the
have
blade
enough
on the
time, I can
Genji and you
dash.
managed to trade your blade for
I
his
have-
Transcendence.
We
All of that
definitely
is fine. All of that is fine here.
Okay, the wall's already down. We can go mid.
Sombra doesn't have.
Let's go.
I have a open you again.
The mid.
Sorry.
Wow. Okay. That works.
Brain, kill.
I'm on point.
How is it? I fucking hate
Alright.
her shatter.
Watch
That
out,
really
watch out
showed
for
up.
May, watch out for May.
I'm watching the Grav.
Well, you're also going to have
Milo,
to...
win. One.
I froze. I'm dead.
Stay dead.
Probably the best place to watch for a Graviton is not in the middle of a
Sorry,
blizzard.
No, they have too many ults.
Yeah, can we swap the Genji? Like, they're literally counterplaying it.
Like, it's nice that you do have a
Let's just
McCree
get-
now,
let's
which is
just
going to
get
give
on
you
this.
much
It's too late,
higher
it's too late.
damage, and
Just
it
get
gives
on
you
to
some
it.
pretty good utility against the Mei, for example. But yeah, when you are playing these much lower damage compositions, you need to be using the utility, because most characters, when they do get to the lower damage, they have higher utility or higher mobility. One of the two. That's generally the
So we're running
trade-off.
Hanzo?
That's good game design, unless you're Doomfist. But anyway, yeah, so
you wanna
just
play Hanzo?
playing Genji here, you need to be working around ult economy a lot more. You need to be working around the Sombra as well with her EMPs. Just kind of like hard focusing targets. That might work in scrims where you are going to have everybody on the same page and everyone focusing the same targets, but that isn't something that would happen in ranked. In that, like, if the damage which you had, if the target was hacked before you dove or focused fired the target, that would be fine. You know, if you had a higher damage and you focused that target, that would be fine. But Genji's like role in a dive composition is his high impact ultimate and his ability to do that nice one-time burst combo onto a low HP target. So when you are playing like the Tracer Genji, the Tracer is the main source of damage. Tracer just shits out damage if she can stay alive and hit her shots. Whereas if a target is low, just you can instantly take care of them with Shuriken Dash and then your Shuriken melee combo, right? And then you get your dash back up. You can do the same thing to the next target or escape if you have to. But you're playing Genji as if his job is to actually be a damage dealer, where he's more of like a burst damage dealer with his combo and then a high impact ultimate. And you're not getting high impact out of your ultimate, and you're being too aggressive with your cooldowns so that you're just doing kind of like a consistent output of damage instead of bursting targets down.
I don't mind, man.
You're doing this little trick, are you? So you do watch Contenders, obviously.
Attackers incoming in 30 seconds.
Was this Contenders or was this Overwatch League? I know it happened in Contenders, but didn't somebody also do this in Overwatch League? It was both? So they did this with Genji and a Tracer behind so that they could actually have a really coordinated first dive through the choke point without having to reposition their flankers using cooldowns.
Doing first, Mercy Ryan.
I just, interesting.
Attackers incoming. Defend objective A.
Zarya. Sombra.
Brain Discord.
No, I'm getting knocked back into their team. I'm dead. Wow, dude. That knockback.
Let
Her
Mercy.
You get the
Sombra's
res?
behind.
Trade Sombra's
Mercy. Sombra.
Doomfist,
I
Doomfist,
can't
half.
do
Res
anything,
is in.
actually. On rest.
So yeah, the reason the guys in the Overwatch League and Contenders did that strategy was to execute a dive on the back
fire
line
strike?
Anybody?
very
Oh,
early
okay,
into
yeah.
the fight itself. But you were just kind of like there.
I'm on the way.
So
Mercy's
it's
half.
what's the best way to explain this? So the choke is here, window. And if the opponent is here, for example, if you're playing dive and you're diving into them, then if you had your Tracer and your Genji on this side of the wall, they would either have to use resources like blinks, or the Genji may have to like swift strike across the wall. Either that, or he's going to have to play closer and just be in danger because he's going to be near the enemies. If they are going to dive their supports in the back line here, then you're going to have the Winston and the Diva in this location kind of like diving in. So the idea behind having your Genji or your Tracer behind enemy lines at the start here is that when your Winston and Diva dive in, because these guys were unscouted, they'd immediately being there to apply damage. So if you were going to be back here, then I would expect, if you were kind of emulating what was going on in those Contenders and Overwatch League games, you would be looking to kind of coordinate an attack with your team to very quickly decimate their backline and then work back to front. However, if you're playing back here and you are playing Rein Zarya, then what you're going to be doing is you're going to be sitting and basically existing in the backline, setting up a crossfire. And that if the Rein tries to push through this choke point here, you're going to be able to just spam him with free damage in the back. And if they don't pay attention to you, or they just don't, feel threatened by you, then you have a free way to assault their supports, which attacking their supports, it forces their attention onto you, not onto their front line. And it makes your front line, which would be a Reinhardt and a Zarya, instead of a Winston Diva, win that fight. So you were in that position, but I don't feel like you knew why you were in that position or what you were going to do. I just feel like you've seen other people do it. You were there yourself, but you didn't know why you were there.
Are we gonna hold it?
Maybe Val can do something. I don't know. We have 3 on point right now. 4.
Oh my god,
3.
Doomfist is fucking annoying.
Yeah, we lost point.
Yep.
Piece of balance.
The fact that knock-up knocks you up and back that far, it's kind of...
Objective.
Decoal him.
Defense model.
Just
Objective
oh,
B.
more.
Oh, okay, I have
Doomfist.
50%.
Just a moment too late.
This
I'm getting
I'm
pushed.
how am I hacked from here?
Got baited by that one.
And
Ooh, nice
They're all
hammer from
down.
Donut. Ooh, we got counter slammed though.
I have my ult.
Oh,
oh shit.
Wow, that was your entire defense? That was unfortunate. So your actual mechanics on Genji seem to be fine, which would be, I suppose, understood from the fact that you have like 300 hours on Genji. That was a pretty short game.
hacked from here.
Torb pick. But what are my thoughts here on Genji? So my thoughts on Genji are not that you're bad at Genji. It's your overall kind of it's a game sense and a positioning thing. So which isn't going to be just Genji here. So not understanding your role, and you also have a little bit of a difficulty with positioning as well. Let me kind of like jump into a custom game and talk about positioning a little bit on like Hanamura. There's so many like weird... You've developed a very unique Genji style to yourself. I just don't think it's a very good Genji style. His dash usage would definitely be a big improvement for him. So let's look at the 2 examples. New tank hero. Okay, 2 examples. Create, settings, maps, none. Hanamura. Let's go on attack. Start.
Traveling to Hanamura.
Okay, Genji. So, one of the things that Genjis can do is be really good at scouting and just being in different angles and weird positions and whatnot, and being able to poke with shurikens as well. You know, you can do this. You can hear, you suddenly have perfect intel over the actual entire field here, and unless they've got a Widowmaker or something whose basic crosshairs are trained up in this area, there's not a lot that anyone can do about this. If there's a Hanzo or something here, you know, you can be like, whee! You know, check the window out, and suddenly you've got more intel. But a lot of the times, when you were playing Genji, you were playing around chokes and following your Reinhardt, which isn't, like, the worst thing ever, but there are better characters for doing things like that. Like, if you were going to play that style, you'd want to play something like a soldier or something like that, because you were just doing as much damage as you could while playing with your tanks and more or less ignoring your supports, which is fine. It's not really Genji's best interest in order to actually be peeling for supports or anything like that. You can, but it depends on what's attacking them. But then when we came up to here, they had a Mei, and you were playing dive, and you kept trying to push through this staircase here. And at one point, you know, like, you were baited out the wall, and then you were here, and you were poking down this sight line, and you were trying to contest a Reinhardt up onto this platform as well. So you were trying to push through this top right window. But really, why? Again, if you are going to try and play like this, like a frontline DPS or something, there's other characters that could better do it. But if you were something like, if they were having a Reinhardt on the high ground, you could be in this position and just being a pain in the ass or something like that. So instead of poking from here to here, if you were to find more angles that were undefended, you could put a lot of pressure on. So you could apply pressure from here to here. If they're holding the high ground, from here to here, people in the back line, people in that corner. And the couple of times where you did flank around, you were playing in this area, but this area isn't as useful, right? So there's no scouting information. We can't see where the defenders are actually positioning themselves. We can see the point if we go here, but we don't have as much value itself. And we only really get to fight people if they move into this area, which we can then contest. But this area itself is not really useful for us, because if we do use Genji's dash, then our only really method of vertical escape is to here. So Genji wants to be a lot more annoying, looking for... You can get your own information about where people are. You can look for opportunities. You can build Blade by poking tanks from a distance or finding little angles that they aren't protecting or anything like that in order to do that. Then when we actually do attack targets, if while you're scouting, which you'll be able to do just by existing in places with better sight lines, if you find the opportunity, then you can engage on that opportunity itself. And then when we're going to the Tracer play, we'll go over to the side. I did die of Ligma. So you were hiding in this little bush over here. So, right, the reason why you hide in this bush is so that they don't scout you. And then you can either come in from here, or if you're up behind them, you can be from here, you can be from here, or from here. But the idea, the way that this was done in the Overwatch League and Contenders is they had a Winston and D.Va, and then once the opponents got to here, they dove past the opponent's front line onto their back line. Whereas if you were a Tracer who was playing here and you wanted to dive their back line, you would have to go 1, 2, 3, and then attack their back line. But if you had been hiding back in this area, when your front line, your Winston and your D.Va, dove their supports, if you were already up here, you wouldn't have had to commit any blanks, and you could have them to sustain yourself in the fight longer and pursue kills. But if you weren't going for a dive and you just wanted to be on a flank presence, then you could just sit here, right? So Tracer's fall-off range is 10 meters. This is about 10 meters here, including the incline. So you'd still be doing maximum damage to the back of a Reinhardt. And how is an opponent actually going to dislodge a Tracer from this location? It's going to be extremely difficult. Just the existence of a Tracer in this backline here applies so much pressure to supports and tanks that they have to deal with you, but they can't deal with you with a single individual's worth of resources. But when you were playing this Tracer here on this point, you started here, and then you were like, you put one clip into a Reinhardt, and then you blinked to play again more of like a frontline DPS as a flanker character. So there's some game sense things with the actual usage and mechanics on your character. I think is fine for the elo you're at. Your cooldown management, I'd like to see you be using it a lot more tactically, you know, for an actual purpose. Never seen that before. But instead of just using it as quickly as possible in order to have as high a damage output as possible. So those are kind of like my main tips for your Genji, but your actual Genji play is decent enough. So this video is by Coach Sexy. He's the coach for Blank Esports, and he talks about some of the Genji playstyles and whatnot. It's a pretty good video for people who want to learn about Genji. But there's a whole bunch of different playstyles that you can perform on Genji, and even like even the pro Genjis all have different styles, like EQO, Shadowburn, Who Are You, Pascal, any of those guys. They all got different styles. But the style where you're playing it as basically just a frontline DPS to try and put out consistent damage as much as possible and then combo with a shit ton of ultimates is just such a weaker playstyle compared to what's out there for Genji players. I'd strongly consider putting more thought into the tactical side of your Genji play.